that need to be done. I'm telling you, I think it's important. I think it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be helpful. I think it's going to, on a certain level, help reduce inflation, as they've been saying, because look, they've been laying it out. Going, look, by reducing the cost of healthcare a little bit, that's going to help. Healthcare for most families is extraordinarily expensive, especially for retirees. One of the biggest things. It's one of the reasons that I'm not already retired. If we had healthcare, if we had national healthcare in this country, people like me and my age and a little bit older would all be leaving the workforce in droves to go do other things, which again, the reason corporate America doesn't fight to get rid of their holding on to healthcare. It's that one thing that keeps people attached to the workforce. Again, something that we should be, because you talk to people down the line, want healthcare. Now, the part that I find interesting is making corporate America pay. Make them pay their share. We used to do that, back in the old days, back when our grandparents and our great-grandparents ruled the roost. Corporate America, they used to pay their share. And look, you could go, well, they paid more than their share. Well, that's kind of how that goes, especially when you benefit from all of the infrastructure that we have built, the education system, the workforce, the roads, the bridges, all of that stuff. Kind of important to participate in that. It's only been the last 40 years, Reagan forward, that we've gone, no, that's okay. That's okay, corporate America. Let the working people cover it. What I find interesting is we're going to begin to tax one of the things that I find despicable, and that's these stock buybacks. Now, remember what we're told. The fantasy that we were sold on the trickle-down economics argument, which was if we give the rich people all the money, we give the smart people all the money, that they're going to know what to do with it, and that we're going to all benefit from it. That it's going to trickle down, right? Like rivers of gold and honey, it's going to come trickling down on us, and it's going to be like heaven. It's going to be like nirvana. And this gold liquid, like manna from heaven, is going to rain down upon us. And it's going to be sweet, not salty like the stuff that we're getting leaked on now with. So we give them all this resource. We give them all this money and go, okay, go. Do the smart stuff that's going to help society. You're going to help create the jobs, the good union wage jobs with health care and with retirement security and safety. Go do that. And are they? No. No, they're buying back their shares. And what stock buybacks tell me is that they have no productive use for this money whatsoever. This is them admitting to us, yeah, we kind of lied. This is them admitting that we've got no productive use for this money in the economy, that there's nothing we can think of to do with this money that we used to get taxed on and that government used to use to fund roads and bridges and education and healthcare and go down the list and pay for our wars and all that stuff. That's them saying we don't know what to do. So we're just going to divvy it up amongst ourselves, we the rich people, and continue to make ourselves wealthier. This year, corporate America will spend about $1 trillion on stock buybacks. About $1 trillion. Stop and think about this. Our GDP is only $23 trillion. Our debt is $30 trillion. So corporate America is just divvying up amongst themselves, making themselves wealthier. Now, again, not putting this to productive use. About 5% of our GDP into their pockets. Now, what could that do to stave off inflation? What could that do to help workers earn better wages, hours, conditions, all of that? What could that do? A lot. But we're not going to do that because we've got such a screwed up tax code. And look, it's a victory that anything was done at all. A 1% tax on the stock buybacks is still something. 1% of $1 trillion is still a ton of money. Sorry, it's not. It's not enough. And it's something that we need to be working for in the next bill. Because think about it this way. Everyone was complaining about, and still complaining that, gas prices are too high, and they are. ExxonMobil, they're gonna buy back $30 billion in their stocks this year. Coming up soon. They've already bought some. ConocoPhillips, $15 billion. You go down the list. They're all buying that could be used to lower gas prices. But it's not. It's meant to make the wealthier wealthier because these companies are wildly wealthy. But Rick, this is capitalism. No, this is gouging. This is a system where they know that you have no choice. In a free market capitalist system, there's the ability to abstain. That's what a free market is. You have the ability to abstain from purchasing this stuff. Gas and energy, one of those things in this day and age, sorry. Nobody's lighting their homes with candles and no one's, rubbing sticks together and nobody's, nobody's walking, 30 miles to work anymore. And they know this. And this is where you go, it was a huge accomplishment, but it wasn't what it should have been. It should have been much, much chunkier, much bigger. And this is where we keep organizing. This is where we keep coming together. Because look, 1% is a start. It's much bigger than it was. But we keep organizing on this. We keep hammering on this. Now, how did we get here? Well, Kirsten Sinema. Thank you very much. And someone called not too long ago and said, well, what did Kirsten Sinema get? Evidently, it's now being reported that she got $1 million worth of contributions from the folks in the private equity world. $1 million in campaign contributions. It's a nice little chunk of change. Going to help with the re-election campaign, maybe. Problem is $35 billion was saved by the private equity folks. And I started thinking about the return on investment there. How do I get that kind of return on investment? That's like invest $1, get 35 grand back. How do I get that? And this is the problem with our system right now, and with all the lobbyist money that goes in and all the campaign finance cash that keeps being funneled to these campaigns. I mean, our government's cheap. We're talking cheap dates here, folks. And the sad reality is we end up footing the bill through higher energy costs, through lower opportunities for our kids, through an infrastructure that's, fortunately being somewhat fixed, but even as historic as the $1.2 trillion plan that Biden got pushed through and the Democrats got pushed through, still not enough, because the American Society of Civil Engineers is saying, about now we need about 4.8 trillion. So we got about a quarter of the way there. We're getting there. We're moving. And this is where the organizing for tomorrow begins. Take the victory today, big win, and begin organizing for tomorrow. Because look, Republicans have no plans here. There's nothing here from the Republican Party. And the weird thing for me is all I keep hearing from Republicans, and the guy running for Senate in my state, Dr. Quack, trying to, I can't even accrue today. The heck is it's a crudiday? No, it's a veggie platter. Okay, put some carrots and some broccoli and some dip, $20, and trying to connect with the working class by using the word crudiday. No, that's his. Your life's terrible because a bag of carrots cost an extra $1. That's what they're trying to convince us. Beating the drum of inflation while it's deflating, because things are getting better, but you don't hear them talk about how are you going to make things better? How are you going to bring gas prices down? How are you going to bring food prices down? How are you going to change things? There's never any plans. Now, Rick Scott has a plan. I would argue Rick Scott's plan makes everything worse. He's just going to wipe everything away and allow the wonders of the free market capitalist system to take over, and you'll be at the whims of corporate America. And we all know how that works out. The robber barons aren't as generous as corporate as government is, as we the people are. But all they keep bringing to us is vote for us because your life sucks. And it's those evil Democrats. When the reality is the only people getting things done right now are those evil Democrats. with no help, mind you, from our Republican friends, because they have no plans, they have no ideas, they have no vision. When they had control, what did they do? They did one thing. They cut taxes for rich people. That's it. That's their only club out of the bag. Other than that, Republicans hate working people, and it shows in their policies. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Was today's signing of the Inflation Reduction Act, was that a big deal? Do you think it's going to help? Is it going to help seniors? Going to help close that donut hole, make them not have to choose between cat food and medicine? I know that's an extreme case. Yeah, but an extreme case that far too many in this country have to make. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. Chime in. Tell me what you think. I think it's a big win. I think it's something important. I think it's going to be helpful. But tomorrow we wake up and we organize for more. Just my thoughts. Back after this.
If you're a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. Generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So here's a good story, I think. The Presidential Emergency Board, I guess tomorrow, going to release their findings on what to do with the railroad workers. Because, as I said the other day, there's the potential of a strike or a lockout. There's possibly going to be some kind of an issue if there isn't an agreement. But what is being reported is the Presidential Emergency Board is calling for an annual pay increase between 4 and 7% through 2024, and retroactive pay hikes for 20 and 21, plus an extra day off, I guess. So, when you look at this, a proposed pay increase of 22% over 5 years, that's hopefully going to stave off a strike, because a strike in the railroad industry right now would really hurt the supply chain. But if you're the workers in this industry who have been overworked and underpaid for years, who have had to suffer through massive cuts, you're finally at the rope's end. From the reports that I've been hearing, basically people are leaving the job and they can't get anybody to come do them because the hours are terrible, the conditions are getting worse, and they want to go to a one-person train at some point. And you go, how insane is that? I mean, the fact that you have 2 people on a train that a mile long is ridiculous. But it's all about cutting those costs. It's all about lining the pockets of corporate America. But we'll see what happens tomorrow when the talks between the major freight railroads and the unions continue. But from what is being told, this is a really good deal, and we'll see where it goes. Also, a second Trader Joe's has just unionized downtown Minneapolis. Our listeners in Minneapolis, make sure you shout out to the Trader Joe's downtown. The second unionized Trader Joe's in the country. This is less than a month after the one in Massachusetts. Could we see this become the next Starbucks, where you're seeing workers in these places, begin to really ramped this up. Now, the thing that I remember about Trader Joe's is during the pandemic, and this should be one of the rallying cries around all of this, and I'm sure it is. A worker said, wrote a letter, because open door policy, suggestion box, put your suggestions in. He suggested that they do better on the COVID protocols, made suggestions, and then was fired. Him and a coworker fired, and in the letter of termination was told, hey, you're an at-will employee. There's the door. You're clearly not Trader Joe's material for having the audacity to question the grand poobahs. And this is where, I was saying then when that happened, right then the unionization effort should have started to end at-will employment. But it's good to see. Good on you folks in Minneapolis. Good stuff there. Also, Amazon workers in Albany, New York, they have filed a petition for a union election. And again, it comes back down to what we've been talking about: dignity and respect on the job, safety, decent wages, same kind of thing here. You've got these workers who have worked through the pandemic and treated horribly, and saying, we're gonna fight to make it better. Now, yesterday after I heard the news in San Bernardino of workers walking off of the Amazon air hub terminal, the air freight hub terminal. I had a couple of people go, well, they could just quit and go somewhere else. And that's the idiotic response to this situation. It's one of those things that always makes me angry, because it's defeatist. It's one of those things that say, we can't make things better. We just have to tolerate mistreatment. We just have to tolerate the kind of horrible conditions that we hear across the board at these Amazon facilities. It's defeatist in that we can't change things. And when I was doing organizing, I remember people going, yeah, it's bad here, but I'm only going to be here a couple of months, and then I don't care what happens. And then you'd see them a year or two later, and they're still there. And you go, you could have made things better. And why not make things better for the next person? But my problem is we're heading into this moment where everyone's beginning to act the same. Where because you've got these behemoths like the Walmarts, like the Amazons, who are pulling down conditions, who are weighing down the ability to do better, people don't have a choice. You're in deplorable conditions and struggling to make ends meet, and there's no outlet. Well, go find a job somewhere else. But they're all the same. They're all reading from the same playbook. They've all got the same union-busting consultants. They were all cut from the same corporate cloth that says profit over people. We need to squeeze every bit of productivity out of the individual. Every moment needs to be monitored. Every moment needs to be evaluated. Every moment needs to be documented. And then we need to do coaching so that you can do better. And look, I'm not against doing better. But when it's about micromanaging every second of your day in a way that basically is dehumanizing. And it's not just warehouse workers. It's not just factory workers on an assembly line. It's not just blue collar workers anymore. This kind of productivity fetish is making its way into every industry. And the New York Times just had an interesting piece that I'm going to talk about a little bit later that goes through a whole bunch of these scenarios of it's just not those manual menial labor jobs anymore that are being micromanaged. It's not just those jobs that you can do the math on. You pick up 6 boxes and it takes you this long. Yeah, it's not those kind of jobs anymore. It's all of them. And eventually, micromanagement's going to come for everybody. And some people are like, well, we need this because we need to, and I love this one, we need to weed out the bad ones because I'm a good one. And I've seen this so many times. The very people who say, well, I'm one of the good ones. Why are they coming after me? Because eventually everyone Everyone gets into the shark tank. And as you get older, you're not going to be as productive, especially when you're doing manual labor work. And when you have quotas and goals that keep shifting and moving, like we find at a place like Amazon. Which is why I keep coming back to my belief that you need to have a voice in the workplace. And unions that's how we do this. But corporate America spends so much money convincing workers that no, you're so much better than that. You can make your own deal. You're so much better. And they pander to that. That anybody who wants to be in a union is somehow a sloth and lazy, and it's not reality. The reality is people in unions are hardworking folks who just want to make a better life for themselves, who want to make sure that there's an opportunity to work hard, play by the rules, and yes, get ahead. Make a living wage, have good health care, share in the profits of their labor. But you look at a company like Amazon who's making wild profits. So much profit, by the way, that they can shoot their founder into space a couple of times. Build him a giant big bathtub boat. And he will thank you for it. For the sacrifice of lower wages, less health care, less opportunity. And oh, by the way, micromanaged workdays. So if you've got a story, I want to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Do you work in a workplace where they micromanage your every movement, either with one of those wrist computers or punching a clock or scanning, or just are they tracking your computer movements? I'd love to hear it. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. We'll take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 2012. That was the day a release of flammable vapor led to a fire at the Chevron refinery in Richmond, California. A Level 3 community warning system alert was issued for the cities of Richmond, San Paulo, and North Richmond. Toxic black smoke could be seen for miles while the fire burned for hours. 19 workers were nearly incinerated trying to escape the fire. More than 15,000 area residents sought medical treatment for chest pains, breathing problems, headaches, and sore throats. The Chemical Safety Board found that the release was caused by a leaking pipe that eventually ruptured. The pipe, made of carbon steel, suffered sulfidic corrosion. The Chemical Safety Board noted that for 40 years, the refinery industry had known that carbon steel corrodes at a much faster rate than higher chromium content steel pipe. The pipe in question had no shutoff valve to isolate the leak. In its final report, the Chemical Safety Board issued a number of findings. They found that Chevron knew of the corrosion but did nothing to prevent it. As well, Chevron not only failed to perform 100% component inspections, but it also rejected earlier recommendations to inspect and replace the pipe that would eventually fail. When it came to emergency response, Chevron failed to identify and communicate process controls or damage mechanisms in the incident command structure. They also had no leak response guidance or formal protocol to determine how to handle a process leak. The Chemical Safety Board found the safety culture lacking. Workers were reluctant to use their stop work authority and were often encouraged to continue operations despite hazardous conditions. The Chemical Safety Board issued a number of recommendations, including more stringent regulatory enforcement. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Senator Joe Manchin, a one-man political steamroller in Washington, is a Democrat, except when he's not, which is most of the time. A multimillionaire West Virginia coal executive, he's the darling of fossil fuel and pipeline lobbyists and beloved by Republican opponents of progressive Democratic policies. Indeed, he's funded by Republican billionaires. But Washington lobbyists and billionaires are not the only source of personal political power that allows him to hold office and block little d Democratic policies that the American majority wants and needs. Back home, Joe has maintained tight authoritarian grip on West Virginia's Democratic Party structure, rigging the rules to put little Joes in each and every party position. In turn, this has long given Boss Manchin control over Who gets to run as Democrats for down-ballot elected offices in the Mountain State? Until June 18, that is. That's when a statewide Democratic rebellion that had been organizing for 6 years elected its slate of over 50 candidates to oust the Manchinites on the party executive committee, replacing all but one of the top party officials with grassroots activists. It truly was a diverse, people-run victory. Selena Vickers, a social worker, was chief strategist, and Mike Pushkin, a cab driver, is now the party chair. Danielle Walker, now vice chair of the committee and the first person of color in state history to sit on the party's governing body, summed up the significance of this turnaround. There's a new beacon of light shining down on the government with people energized and ready to strategize with a return to the democratic process. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help bring this kind of progressive reform to your local or state Democratic Party, go to Our Revolution, the one national group working on this fundamental democratic change to the Democratic Party. OurRevolution.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, thrilled by the fact that Joe Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act. Like I said earlier, going to help with the cost of health care, especially for seniors. That is a good thing, but also going to help us address the climate issue. And, you know, I've been saying for the longest time, we need massive investment in moving away from the dirty stuff into the new, cleaner technologies. And I know I've had a bunch of, conservatives, we tried this during the Obama years, Solyndra. Yeah, we didn't really try. So for me, this hopefully going to move us in the direction of making sure that solar panels are on people's homes and on businesses. I've had them on my house for years, love them, but also wanted to be made here in this country, and here to share some thoughts on how we make sure that that happens. I've asked our good friend Scott Paul to come talk with us. Scott is the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, their website. Scott, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, it is great to be with you.
So a pretty big deal today, the president signing this Inflation Reduction Act. And I know everyone's going to say, well, it wasn't enough. It wasn't the Build Back Better. It should have been bigger, should have been chunkier. I agree. But take the win. Take the win.
Yeah, it is this is a huge victory. And even I think the possibility of an investment this large, say, 3-4 years ago would have seemed impossible or before that as well. Right. And so sure. In ideal world, you can spend $1 trillion on this. But, the fact that the Senate was able to thread the needle with Democrats and work with the administration and with progressives too, and get something that is going to have a sustained, meaningful impact, not only on climate, but on the future of jobs in America. Because, there's obviously mechanisms to create demand for renewable energy in the United States. But the open question, Rick, is where do we source the equipment from?
Exactly.
Where does that come from? Is it going to come from China? Is it going to come from Europe? Or is it going to be homegrown? And this investment and some of the policy incentives that accompany it make it more likely than ever that much more of this is going to be homegrown, and that we are finally going to be able to scale up EV manufacturing, battery manufacturing, solar manufacturing, wind turbine manufacturing right here in the United States of America.
Now, I've been reading a lot of conservative commentators who are saying there's just no way we can compete in this space. There's no way that we can build solar panels. Our wages are too high. We can't compete with the low-road Chinese. We can't compete with their subsidies. We can't compete with basically slave labor. We can't compete in the battery technology because, well, I guess we gave that away years ago. What do you say to that argument, that defeatist argument that, we just can't compete. Our costs are too high. We got too many regulations, those job-killing regulations, Scott. We just can't do it. Sorry, man.
Yeah, they're completely wrong about that. And there's a couple of things that, that exist in our economy right now that prove them wrong. But let's look at aerospace, for instance. We have really high wages in aerospace. A large sector of that industry is unionized, and we have the best aerospace industry in the world. It's the envy of the world. It's the standard, and it's because there's policy, and part of that is obviously the defense contracts that these companies are able to secure that aid in the civilian side research and development and innovation. Another example is pickup trucks, right? A lot of manufacturing went overseas in automobiles. Pickup trucks did not, because there is a 25% tariff on imported pickup trucks. So if you have a mechanism like that, you can make it work. And right back at conservatives here, there was concern, obviously, that we were too dependent on foreign oil, over the last couple of decades. And so conservatives put into place a policy of subsidies for the oil and gas industry and fracking. And that, put aside your opinion about it, but it unquestionably scaled up in the United States to a remarkable degree. And again, this is an industry that pays better than average wages compared to anywhere around the world. So the idea that we can't do that in renewables is just a folly. It's a canard, and conservatives, I think, are just upset because first of all, we're going to see this shift, and second of all, I think it's going to be very, very successful.
Now, I hope so, because here's my problem is we're going to have this investment, we're going to be moving down this road, and we've seen this movie before. When I was a kid growing up, I remember Jimmy Carter put solar panels on the White House. I remember being super excited about the fact that really we're going to take the energy from the sun and we're going to be able to do stuff. That's fabulous. It's amazing. Jetson kind of stuff. And then Reagan came in, first thing, rip it off, and here we are all these years later, still on the dirty stuff. I fear, we're right back there. We're beginning, we're moving, going to start, and then the next wave comes in, and we don't touch this again for another couple of decades.
Yeah. That is obviously a concern. Okay. And there's no question about it. And there's too many kind of naysayers and climate deniers and others who don't believe in this path for whatever reason. Okay. But I also think that when there is a broader take-up among consumers of things like the Ford F-150 Lightning electric pickup truck made in America, that I think will become ubiquitous across, country roads in red states as well. They'll like not paying for any gasoline. I think that's going to be that's going to be pretty handy. And, put those solar panels on the roof, your energy bills go down. I think there's a lot of consumers that are going to like that. And along with it, Rick, the manufacturers that are locating. I mean, you're seeing, solar manufacturers located in Georgia. You'll have semiconductor manufacturers locate in Texas. You're going to have an electric vehicle supply chain all up and down the industrial heartland from Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana, all on down to Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia. And so I do think that changes the political dynamics quite a bit, even if they may have disagreed with the philosophy or this legislation at one time.
Well, we'll see. I'm hopeful. Like I said, today, the signing of the bill gives me some hope that we're moving in the right direction. Wish we'd have done it sooner, especially given the fact that most of this technology is stuff that was developed here, and that we ended up giving away. I mean, the advantage that we had years ago of developing this technology and then allowing the Chinese to either retro-engineer it or just we flat out gave it to them or they stole it. We're behind in this game at this moment. And I find that to be really troubling, given the fact that we were at one point, had we the vision and the foresight and the investment so far ahead, now we're playing catch up.
Yeah, we're certainly playing catch up, and we're playing a dangerous game as well, because we have, in some cases, countries like China are essentially the single source for a lot of this stuff. And that's dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous to have a single source for a lot of different reasons. It's even more dangerous to have a single source that may have geopolitical goals that are not aligned with our own.
Yeah,
right?
hello, pandemic. The
Yeah,
pandemic's
yeah.
calling to remind us of,
Yeah.
how bad our supply chain's been broken because our manufacturing is overseas.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so I think there's a realization, certainly among this administration, and I will say even among some conservatives, that like having Uyghur enslaved people make polysilicon for solar panels that are going to the United States is not good for a number of moral, ethical, economic, lots of different reasons. Okay, and I think the same thing for some of these uh, minerals that go into our batteries, like lithium-ion batteries. And so I do think there's a deeper appreciation for that. But you're right. I mean, the problem is, and I'm not going to blame conservatives as much as I am going to blame like big businesses here. The big businesses loved to write the policy, and they did write the policy that opened up China for manufacturing back to the United States of America with no or virtually no tariffs, and made a deal with the devil with the Chinese Communist Party on this.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, we lost a lot of manufacturing jobs. As you indicated, we either gave these technologies away, or they were stolen or borrowed, I guess, and we made ourselves vulnerable. And so this ship hasn't turned all the way around, right? Because we still have a lot of vulnerabilities, but I think there's greater awareness than ever. And with this Inflation Reduction Act, with the CHIPS Act that was signed last week with respect to semiconductors and other technology products, and with the investment in infrastructure that we saw, I think there's this understanding that we got to get our act together.
Yep.
We can't let those big businesses write the rules because they don't have our jobs interest, our security interest at heart.
No, they got their profit interests. It's that simple. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're here with Scott Paul. Scott's the president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing, AmericanManufacturing.org, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do. I want to change gears a little bit. I know you were at the Steelworkers Convention last week. And I'm sure the CHIPS Act came up because that means jobs and manufacturing. I'm sure, all of, this Inflation Reduction Act was probably something that came up because, again, it's going to mean jobs in a lot of places. Curious how things play out there at the convention.
Yeah, it's it's good. Like I'm trying to, it's a good test market, Rick, because there are working people from all over the country in manufacturing there. And vastly different backgrounds, right? So some are from rural areas, some are from smaller cities, some are from the South, some are from demographics that are, I think, frequently associated with Trump voters, right? And so it's interesting to see what folks were saying. And here's the interesting thing: in virtually every case, their factories were hiring all over the country, and that's obviously a good thing. And in places where they had profit sharing checks or other things like that, they were pretty good, right? Because manufacturing has been scaling up. In fact, we've added 600,000 plus manufacturing jobs since the beginning of the Biden administration, which is the most going back to 1990 for a period like that.
Yeah, but I thought everything was horrible. I thought the sky was falling and the economy was collapsing, and we were in recession, and Joe Biden did that, and I thought it was horrible. In fact, I just heard earlier, a crude day is $20. To get vegetables for a crude day, carrots and broccoli, $20.
Right. Well, look, I'm not going to say that inflation was not a concern, right? And clearly, when they're bargaining, they're thinking about getting wage increases that are going to offset some of that inflation, which is coming down, of course, right? And so, but I also think, and they had, they heard from Labor Secretary Walsh, they heard from Trade Ambassador Catherine Tai, they had a video recording from the president. The vice president went to Las Vegas to speak to the steelworkers, and there was a very pro-worker, pro-union message across the board. And the fact that a trade ambassador came to the steelworkers and basically said, we've got your backs, right? We're going to do trade enforcement. You're always going to have a seat at the table. You know, candidly, that's never been the case, even in a Democratic administration.
It's about time.
Before. So yeah, that was super, super encouraging, Rick.
No, it's about time, and that's why I'm thrilled with this administration, and I think doing a great job to this moment. And this Inflation Reduction Act going to be helpful. Again, wasn't big enough. I thought it should have been more, but that's why tomorrow we wake up and we organize for the future. It is that simple. I wanted to get your thoughts also. Tim Ryan, I love Tim Ryan in Ohio. Hope he wins. But he's talking about pushing the idea of Made in America on the solar front.
Yeah, this is this is a step in addition to that Inflation Reduction Act, where the public purchases could make a big difference in scaling up solar manufacturing. And so right now, the U.S. government buys solar power, and oftentimes that's not done directly. That's done through contracts, right, or through through third parties. And in those, there's not a Buy America requirement right now. When it's purchased directly, there will be. But Tim Ryan saying, wait. Even if it's a contractor, that solar energy should be procured with panels that are made in the United States. And so we strongly support that effort. I know Tim Ryan, in Ohio, there's a major solar manufacturer in Toledo, one of the few in the United States. But there's others around the country as well. And so I think it would be a big step to do this. And I think it's the right signal for the administration to send that they're serious about scaling up solar panel production in the U.S.
And the larger you make the scale, the prices come down. That's your supply and demand thing.
Exactly right.
That's how that works. But Scott, I appreciate the time, the information. As always, great stuff. Keep up the great work.
You bet, Rick. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Anytime. Our good friend Scott Paul, president of the Alliance for American Manufacturing. Make sure you check out the work that they do, americanmanufacturing.org. Gonna take a quick break. Back with your thoughts. 1-866-416-RICK. 1-866-416-7425. This is The Rick Smith Show. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day that the U.S. Congress passed the National Apprenticeship Act. It was also known as the Fitzgerald Act. The purpose of the act was to, quote, formulate and promote the furtherance of labor standards necessary to safeguard the welfare of apprentices. Apprentices are workers learning a skill set. They are typically paid less than skilled workers or journeymen during the course of their training. Apprenticeship programs are especially found in the building trades, where learning skills like plumbing or electrical work might take years of dedicated training. But before the protections of the 1937 Act, there was no national standard governing apprenticeship programs in the United States. This led some apprentices to be exploited. In 1911, Wisconsin became the first state to pass legislation to structure the apprentice system. In the 1920s, multiple labor unions advocated for national apprentice standards to promote fairness and safety for workers. Recognizing the need for national apprentice guidelines, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt commissioned a committee to study the issue. They were tasked with developing training standards for apprenticeship programs. The 1937 law gave the committee the authority to complete their job. The Committee on Apprentice Training became a permanent part of the U.S. Department of Labor. The Bureau of Apprenticeship works with state governments to ensure the fair treatment of apprentices. Today, apprenticeship programs provide classroom and on-the-job training to help develop a skilled labor force. In 2015, 52,500 participants graduated from registered apprenticeship programs. Nearly 500,000 workers participated in apprentice training programs, learning skills that will build their financial security.
You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425. Let's go to the phones. We got CJ from Madison on line one. CJ, how are you today?
am good. Thanks again for taking my call, Rick.
Sure. What's on your mind, buddy?
You know, companies pass their costs on to their customers. And the Congressional Budget Office scored this thing, and they said it's going to do nothing to fight inflation, at least for a number of years. And there was a senator, I believe his name, from Idaho, Mike Crapo, tried to get an amendment to this bill, this disaster bill that is going to raise taxes. He tried to
raise taxes on corporate America. You're right. Yeah, you're right. On those stock buybacks that are so wonderful and that we love so much. Go ahead.
Well, he tried, Crapo tried to get an amendment that would exempt people that made less than $400,000 from being targeted by the IRS. You know which party fought that and blew that down? The Democrats. Guaranteed business owners are terrified. They're going to get attacked by the new $87,000.
Don't cheat on your taxes. Here's the fun part in this. Don't cheat on your taxes. How hard is that? Don't break the law. CJ, don't break the law.
What? You don't think we could use that other $80 billion
CJ, how hard is it to not break the law? I know you guys on the right, seem to be okay with breaking the law these days. Don't break the law. How hard is that?
Who's saying break the law? Rick, I'm not saying
you're the one who
law.
seems to be so afraid that there are going to be people who are going to be checking out your tax return. Don't break the law.
Have you ever been audited?
No, because I pay my taxes, CJ.
That doesn't have a thing to do with it. How many employees do you have, Rick?
I got one, me.
There you go. Well, trust me, there's people out there. Most of these people are small business owners that file singular Class S corporations, and they're going to be attacked. And you know what it's going to cost? The CBO said it's going to cost jobs. You're Democrats, all this thing about
it's kind of bizarre that you got all the jobs back from the pandemic plus some, and yet again you guys are with the fear and it's going to cost these job killing regulations. Oh, we can't tax rich people. I'm tired, CJ. I got to move on to other callers. I appreciate the thoughts, buddy. Thanks so much. Let's go to line 3. We got Alice on line 3. How are we doing, Alice?
Oh, I'm doing okay. That was an interesting conversation.
Yeah. It's all about fear. It's all about scaring. Oh, they're coming for you. Well, don't break the law. How's that?
Exactly. I'm not worried about the IRS. And I'm not worried about the FBI because I'm not selling secrets or espionage or stealing classified documents. It's ridiculous. But what I wanted to say was, with this law being signed, and I'm with you, it's a basis to work on. And the thing is, and as fired up as people are, because people are just sick and tired of the Republican Party and the right wing. I mean, this last, he waved his hands and, declassified stuff, and it's all a hoax kind of nonsense. People are fed up. And if I think for, maybe 5 or 6 or 7 years, maybe longer, can maintain the majority in Congress, the Democrats I'm speaking of, by the way. So you little right-wingers out there, get out your hankies and cry because, I'm a big, bad Democrat. I think if we can retain the White House in the majority, that we might be able to get things a little bit back on track in this nation. Because it's just ridiculous. We're supposed to be a first world country, the leader of the free world, and it's ridiculous. We have women dying. We're worried about. They're screaming about the Taliban, the women over there, and it's like, well, have you seen what the Republicans are doing to the women over here? I mean, the only thing we've got is a bunch of rich people running things, and everybody else is suffering. So you have a good evening, Rick.
Thanks, Alice. Appreciate the thoughts. Look, I'm not concerned about the IRS coming and doing their jobs. In fact, when you look at the numbers, It's just getting us back to where we were, several years ago before they were gutting the IRS. Because again, conservatives are very afraid of the IRS. Because again, when you go back to 2010, 11, when they were, again, breaking the law, because they were all, misfiling their groups as tax exempt. Not surprised that the IRS did their job and went after them. But then it was, no, they're targeting us. Nobody was targeting you specifically. They were targeting lawbreakers. And that's what we want. We want people who are going to pay their taxes. I got to pay mine. Do I want to defend the IRS? No, I'm just unhappy with them as anybody else. But if you want good schools, you want roads, you want bridges, you want a military, you want to have your adventures overseas, you got to pay for it. And you look at the fact that we've got billionaires who pay less in taxes than their secretaries. When you've got massive multi-billion-dollar profitable companies paying less than the mom and pops on Main Street, there's a serious problem here. And to have an entire group of folks who have been trained like Pavlovian dogs to any time they hear the word tax or IRS to start foaming and fight against it, it's kind of remarkable. You have to really give credit to what the right wing's been able to accomplish in training a generation to react instead of thinking about what's going on. It's amazing, really. Quite remarkable. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Are you concerned? Are you afraid? You think the IRS is coming for you? Are they going to kick in your door with the AR-14s, like Senator Grassley said? Is that our future? rick@thericksmithshow.com, or give us a call, 1-866-416-RICK, 1-866-416-7425.
On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 207. The motion is adopted.
Historic Inflation Reduction Act passes Congress. Just don't call it a climate bill.
I'm gonna.
Scientists surprised to find trees now growing in the Arctic. Plus, 100 million Americans will live in an extreme heat belt by 2050, study warns.
All of those warnings and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
It has been a busy week and a huge one for the president, with Congress passing the Inflation Reduction Act, which includes the single largest investment in combating climate change in U.S. history. In any other week, that would have completely dominated the headlines, but not this one.
Well, it's still dominating our headlines. This is the Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, this headline from Fox News of all places, quote, Dodge announces last call for V8-powered muscle cars before they go electric.
The times they are a-changin'.
Sad. What do you got for us today, Desi Doyen?
Well, first, even though Democrats passed the largest climate action in U.S. history,
Yay.
Man-made global warming has not stopped yet.
Boo.
New findings show that climate scientists have underestimated the rate of Arctic warming. It's not warming 2 times faster than the rest of the planet. It's 4 times faster.
Uh-oh.
And that has consequences.
Yep.
Transforming fragile ecosystems, disrupting animal migration, and releasing even more carbon from melting permafrost. Plus, Arctic warming is increasingly linked to changes in the jet stream that cause extreme weather systems to stall in place.
Joe Biden can't sign that bill soon enough.
And researchers publishing in the journal Nature say that they were surprised to find spruce trees growing in the Arctic tundra for the first time, hundreds of miles farther north than their normal range, a century earlier than climate scientists had predicted.
Oops.
In the lower 48 states, a new study study warns that by 2050, about a third of the U.S. population will live in an extreme heat belt, where the heat index is projected to hit 125 degrees Fahrenheit at least one day a year.
125 degrees Fahrenheit?
That's the heat index, which combines temperature and humidity to arrive at how hot it feels outside.
Oh, well, that's not that bad.
Huge swaths of the country will fall into this extreme heat belt, particularly the Southeast and the Midwest. Right now, only 50 U.S. counties are expected to reach a heat index of 125 degrees at least once a year, but by 2050, that will jump to more than 1,000 counties.
Wow.
And the rise in extreme heat will hit non-white communities the hardest. The report includes a database where you can look up the heat projections for your neighborhood. We'll have a link at greennews.bradblog.com. Meanwhile, as we go to air, President Biden later today will be signing the Inflation Reduction Act, the Democrats' landmark climate, tax, and health care bill, which passed Congress with 0 Republican votes.
I thought we weren't supposed to call it a climate bill.
I'm calling it a climate bill because it contains the largest federal climate investment in U.S. history, directing $370 billion to investments in clean energy and infrastructure spread out economy-wide to decarbonize both U.S. industry and households. It builds U.S.-based clean energy manufacturing and a domestic supply chain. It is the first U.S. industrial policy of any kind in decades.
And it comes not a moment too soon.
Several independent analyses confirm that the bill will cut U.S. carbon emissions roughly 40% by 2030. Major concessions were made to secure the required vote of Coal State Democratic Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, including a requirement to offer more public lands for oil and gas extraction alongside renewables and much more. Next, Manchin will get a separate bill later this fall that will streamline permitting for energy infrastructure, both fossil and renewable, angering environmental groups and frontline communities who say they will fight to shape that bill. However, even with those concessions to the fossil fuel industry, the consensus of climate policy experts is that the provisions will likely speed up the transition away from fossil fuels, according to energy journalist David Roberts in a recent broadcast.
It's a giant bag of carrots. So the theory of change here is that these carrots will accelerate the development of renewable energy even further, even faster, and it's going to undercut the economics of fossil fuels even further, even faster. And so fossil fuels are just going to lose on the market. So one of the things the models find is this bill is going to cause a net reduction in U.S. demand for oil and gasoline for the first time ever.
And finally, another major benefit, the law will cut deadly toxic air pollution, reducing childhood asthma and saving lives.
For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, on the tax front, I just had to, for a moment, take a look at an old report by our friends over at the Americans for Tax Fairness. And again, this is one of those moments where you go, when you've got all of these companies that pay zero in taxes. There was a study done by the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy that was put out by our friends over there. 55 companies in 2000 paid zero federal taxes in 2020. Zero. In fact, the amazing part, because that was the headline, they paid zero. But when you dug into the actual numbers, those 55 companies made over $40 billion in pre-tax income and ended up getting back almost $3.5 billion in rebates and basically welfare. We paid them to exist. Companies like Archer Daniel Midland, who had $438 million in pre-tax income and got $164 million from us. Now you go, but hey, that's all perfectly legal stuff. And it is. This is the problem with our tax code. You've got too many of these big corporations who, look, they've got the money and the legal teams and the lobbyists to be able to ensure that they don't pay anything. They walk away. And you know that savings never seems to trickle down, does it? FedEx, for instance, $1.2 billion in pre-tax income. We gave them $230 million in 2020 to exist. You start thinking about this, and even where Steve Forbes and his flat tax idea, you go, as much as I wasn't in favor of that, this kind of stuff wouldn't happen there. Oh, I guess it would, because this is corporate America. But here, corporations are people until we start talking about taxes. And this is the frustrating part in this, because conservatives are going to yell and scream and carry on about you're going to audit people. And yeah, look, I know small business owners who've been audited, and yes, you go through and you better have your ducks in a row. But you don't get to cheat, and you don't get to push that onto somebody else. And this is my concern in this moment, because the other part of this is what the Trump era has brought us, is this using institution, and really, the Obama years, conservatives, fantasized, if you will, that Obama was targeting them, that they were his enemy. And when the reality was they were breaking the rules. That's the reason that they caught someone's attention. And when I hear conservatives talk about, they're going to start targeting people, because it's what they would do. It's what Trump did. Instead of saying, we want an IRS that's going to make people pay their share. And I've got a lot of millionaire friends who are going, look, tax us. We want safe schools. We want safe neighborhoods. We want investments in the country. We want what we had in the 50s and 60s. And this is part of where my mind takes me to. How do we return to what was a golden era in this country, when we had taxation rates that were fair, that the bigger your shoulders, the more that you paid into the system. In fact, the Eisenhower tax code, I would argue, was really much more fair than the one we have now. Every $2,000, it went up a little bit of a percentage. So the more money you made, the higher your tax rate went. Again, the bigger your shoulders, the more you carry. And we use that money to invest in massive infrastructure plans. We paid for higher education, so you didn't saddle a generation with massive student loan debt. We invested in community hospitals so that healthcare wasn't outrageously expensive, because we've put a profit motive with it. We did so much investing in by the way, we had a war machine, and we paid for our wars. We didn't just whip out the credit card and take on massive debt like we have now. Actually paid it off. My conservative friends, they want to go, no, what we need to do. What we need to do is we need to tighten the belt, make those poor people pay. I made a comment yesterday about Wisconsin and Scott Walker. My friends in Wisconsin remind me often of how bad Scott Walker was for workers in that state. And this person's like, no, they got the pension liability issue under control. And I go, yeah, by stealing people's pensions. It's easy if you can screw the people at the bottom. It's easy to right those problems when you just shovel it off on the least able to fight back. Corporate America, what's the first thing they do when they go through bankruptcy? They shed their pension obligations. They screw over their workers. This should be the kind of stuff that draws the working class together. This should be the kind of stuff where we come together and go, yeah, we want an IRS that's going to go after rich people who don't pay their taxes. We want a tax code that's going to ensure that people pay what they're supposed to. And then if you cheat and you get caught cheating, there's a punishment. This isn't that difficult. Especially when you look at the fact that, what we're doing to our institutions. I just came across a study by the folks over at the Economic Policy Institute. They were talking about teachers' salaries. And, across this country, teachers have been under attack by conservatives, for years, really. But attacking their wages. And what EPI found is that average weekly wages for public school teachers, adjusted for only inflation, saw their wages increase only $29 from 1996 to 2021. $29 a week. That's it. Whereas other college graduates, they saw their wages over the same period of time, same metrics, grow over $445. And you go, well, why is that? Well, it's because we've been attacking teachers, we've been attacking education, we've been slashing budgets. Because, hey, we need to continue to cut taxes for corporate America under this guise that, well, they're just going to pass the prices along to consumers without thinking about, no, they're lining their pockets massively. These stock buybacks, I mean, to me, this is the thing that should be the most angering. Because I kind of understand, okay, we're going to give corporate America some money. If they're going to invest in plants, they're going to invest in new equipment, they're going to invest in raw materials, research and development. I get that. Because you can argue, hey, they're going to create new jobs and new industries and, all this good stuff's going to come out of it. But saying, no, we're just going to buy our shares back. We're just going to do some shifting around from money from one pocket to another. That should enrage all of us. I don't care what side of the political divide you're on. I don't care what hat you bought during the last campaign. Should make you insane. We got a gubernatorial candidate in my state here in Pennsylvania, Doug Mastriano, who's saying that we should cut education funding by more than half. And then give it to the parents to go, no, you can homeschool your kids. How insane is that? But it's the world that they're moving us towards. A scary place. Where ideology trumps anything else. Now, I look in Columbus, Ohio. There's potentially a teachers' strike going to happen. There's some bargaining units set up here over the next couple of days, as I understand. But if they don't come to an agreement by the 22nd, there could be a strike. And, what the teachers want are smaller class sizes. They want art and music for students, physical education for students. They want those teachers to be back and so the kids can have those programs. They would like functional heating and cooling units in the classrooms, with filters, so that the air quality isn't horrible. They like a cap on the number of class periods in a school day so that they can actually do their prep. So they can actually be prepared for their classes and do, I don't think, unreasonable stuff. And yet the district's saying, maybe not. In fact, what's being thrown out there as well, if you go on strike, we're going to just replace you with virtual learning. The new strike breakers are going to be the cyber schools. And I've been waiting for that for a while. We're in this kind of moment. And they understand we're divided. We're pitted against each other. And we're eating each other while they're eating our lunch. So the question is, what do we do? Do we continue down this path? I mean, I love the fact that Donald Trump came out the other day and said, rhetoric's getting too heated. We need to calm things down. And then went right out and began attacking and making things worse. How do we jump the divide? That's the question. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
a fan of the show, you've heard our Labor History in 2 segments, and you can hear them on the radio pretty much anywhere in the U.S. Labor history has never been more important than it is right now. So here's what we'd like you to do. Tell a teacher. Tell a teacher that labor history is important and that they can get digestible 2-minute lessons that are absolutely free. Free to download, free to use, free to share. Tell a teacher to go to thericksmithshow.com/history and help us put labor back where it belongs, in the classroom. You know, generations of American workers fought, bled, and died to build the American way of life. It's our job to keep their stories alive. Go tell a teacher that we're here to help them do just that. Find us at thericksmithshow.com/history today.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Pat Cipollone and Patrick Philbin, 2 ex-White House counsel, Trump's guys, they were interviewed by the FBI about the documents stored at Trump's Golden Palace. And this, again, is another one of these moments. This isn't hard. This, at no other point in history would this be difficult to understand. You have a guy who has classified documents. If what I'm being told is accurate, that he had payroll information for people around the world, that I have no idea why you have, other than for blackmail purposes. And I have no idea why you didn't just give it back when they asked for it and just photocopy it. Just mind-blowing to me. And all of these mental gymnastics of, he waved his hands, he thought about it, it was mental telepathy and there's a secret order, super secret order somewhere that he did the day before he left office that nobody knows about. It's exhausting. In fact, it's so exhausting that I'm telling you, I think there's a moment, and I think we're hitting it, where Republicans start throwing him under the bus and start walking away. In fact, Laura Ingraham, who I agree with nothing on, said that maybe it's time to turn the page. She wants all the policies that are Trump, and I don't even know what those are. But she's saying, maybe it's time we turn the page if we can get someone who has all the Trump policies who is not Trump, because he's exhausting. The country, she said, I think is so exhausted. They're exhausted by the battle, the constant battle, that they may believe that, maybe it's time to turn the page if we can get someone who has all the Trump policies, who is not Trump. Now, understand, there are a bunch of Trumpians out there. In fact, you look at 54 of the 87 Republican nominees for battleground offices, governor, senator, that stuff, Congress. They're saying that 2020 was rigged. 54 of the 87. You got 12 of the 13 candidates in Arizona, 13 of 19 in Georgia, 10 of 16 in Michigan, 5 of 9 in Nevada, 10 of 19 in my state of Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, same. Only 4 of the 11. But you still got Ron John, who kind of off his rocker. And I look at this and I'm going, is there any sanity? Maybe. I look at what the Republican Senatorial Campaign Committee just did. They are slashing their funding for a number of states, my state of Pennsylvania being one of them. They cut $5 million in ad buys here in Pennsylvania because Dr. Oz not doing well. Running really a horrible campaign. Basically getting thrashed by a guy who had a stroke. How hard is it to get beaten by a guy who's basically incapacitated? Also, money being pulled from Wisconsin. I guess $2 million have been pulled from there. $2 million from Arizona as well. Some $10 million in total. The Republican Senate Campaign Committee is pulling back. And you go, why? Is it that they're admitting that Trump's favored candidates aren't worth it? That, oops, mistake, possibly. I'm looking to see them pull out of Ohio at some point because J.D. Vance is running a horrible campaign as well. Is it possible the Democrats hold on to the Senate? I think very likely they're going to hold on to the Senate. The hope is they're able to hold on to the House because, look, you look at these last major victories. And I think if you put the two parties next to each other, and look, the Democrats do a bunch of things that I don't agree with. There's a bunch of things that I'm angry about over the years that have driven me insane. But right now, Biden is doing the work. And as he said, today during the thing, get up and do the job. He said the promise of this nation is real. The Inflation Reduction Act is not just about today, it's about tomorrow. It's about showing that America and American democracy works, not just for the privileged few, but for all of us. And you stop and think about what he's been able to do over these last several months. Things that any administration in their first 2 years would have loved to have been able to do. And it's driving conservatives crazy. Because for all of the attacks that they put on him, all of the Sleepy Joe and all of the Let's Go Brandon and all of the nonsense, all of the childish rhetoric, the guy's still getting up and doing the job every day. Still making historic investments in this country's future. Things that are going to be felt for years down the road. That's going to be the legacy. I had someone ask me, what's his legacy going to be up against Trump? Trump was the greatest president in history. I'm going, really? He had one accomplishment. Maybe two. I'll give him credit for the renegotiating of NAFTA. There were some parts of that I'm happy with. But that was because, to be honest, Rich Trumka and the labor movement heavily lobbied and heavily pushed for those changes. But outside of that and the massive tax handout to the wealthy, what was accomplished? Really? Legislatively, what were the wins that the Republicans had? Because they had all the control. And the answer was nothing. Because that's their agenda. Their agenda was making sure that the wealthy are well taken care of. Now, again, my fear in this is Biden has made huge strides forward. And fortunately, these are legislative gains, so they're going to be hard to undo. You've got people like Rick Scott who are going, no, what we're going to do is we're going to defund all of it. We're going to go after those IRS agents because this is the chew toy. This is what's going to keep the right angry. You got to give them something to be blinded by. And the FBI stuff is there, the IRS stuff, all groups that they've been trained like Pavlovian dogs to dislike and to hate. And look, there's a lot to dislike. So that they don't focus on the other stuff, the jobs being created. In fact, I was at a light the other night, and there are a couple of workers standing on the street corner, and a guy had a Trump hat on, and I go, "Hey, Joe Biden did this," and he looked at me. He gave me the standard response that I would expect, and I went to his buddy. I go, "Tell him Joe Biden did this," and he goes, "Yeah, this is money that came from the infrastructure bill. It's the reason we're doing this project." The guy doing the work couldn't even admit that the reason he had the job was because I got to wonder how tortured his soul was knowing that Joe Biden did that. I kind of have to wonder. It's one of those things that, again, a little thing. You're sitting at a red light and you got to have a little entertainment. But it's can't even give credit for that. And the massive investments that are going to happen, Biden did that. And they're going to be around for a while. Now, are we in a moment where the next administration comes in and undoes it all like Reagan did? I know people think Ronald Reagan was a saint and all that, but really kept us on the dirty stuff for much longer than we needed to be. We could be so far ahead. Technology that we developed in this country our scientists, our engineers, our entrepreneurs, that could have been the future. We wouldn't have fought wars for oil. We wouldn't have been in places that are inhospitable to us. You think about all of the terrorism and all of we would have been away from all of that had we followed a different path. Someone the other day, going after Joe Biden because of Afghanistan. And it's horribly tragic. 13 people lost their lives. But again, things put into place by the last administration. Trump did that. Biden was left with two options. One, get out, which he did, and I give him credit for that. Made the right choice. Or two, escalate. Ramp things up. Those are your two options. There wasn't a third. And either way, and this is the beauty of being on the right and being on the opposition, either way, he was going to be attacked. Getting out was the right thing to do. Because presidents of the past had said, no, we're getting out. We're going to bring our troops home. And never did. They kicked the can down the road. I give Biden credit for being decisive and making the decision. Because he could have said, no, we're going to ramp up. You're not going to tell us. We're Americans. And he could have sent thousands more in there. And we could have been mired in another 20-year conflict. Angering moments. And I'm hoping at some point we get true statesmen to get back into politics for the right reasons. The reasons of making people's lives better and making things better as opposed to causing chaos and tearing things apart. I'm hoping, still hopeful. I hope you are too. Again, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Questions, comments, any of that. If you miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you will find ours. Hate emails go to the top of the list. Those are always my favorite. Sometimes I use them here on the program. Quick break, right back.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day that the U.S. Congress passed the National Apprenticeship Act. It was also known as the Fitzgerald Act. The purpose of the act was to, quote, formulate and promote the furtherance of labor standards necessary to safeguard the welfare of apprentices. Apprentices are workers learning a skill set. They are typically paid less than skilled workers or journeymen during the course of their training. Apprenticeship programs are especially found in the building trades, where learning skills like plumbing or electrical work might take years of dedicated training. But before the protections of the 1937 Act, there was no national standard governing apprenticeship programs in the United States. This led some apprentices to be exploited. In 1911, Wisconsin became the first state to pass legislation to structure the apprentice system. In the 1920s, multiple labor unions advocated for national apprentice standards to promote fairness and safety for workers. Recognizing the need for national apprentice guidelines, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt commissioned a committee to study the issue. They were tasked with developing training standards for apprenticeship programs. The 1937 law gave the committee the authority to complete their job. The Committee on Apprentice Training became a permanent part of the U.S. Department of Labor. The Bureau of Apprenticeship works with state governments to ensure the fair treatment of apprentices. Today, apprenticeship programs provide classroom and on-the-job training to help develop a skilled labor force. In 2015, 52,500 participants graduated from registered apprenticeship programs. Nearly 500,000 workers participated in apprentice training programs, learning skills that will build their financial security.
Senator Joe Manchin, a one-man political steamroller in Washington, is a Democrat, except when he's not, which is most of the time. A multimillionaire West Virginia coal executive, he's the darling of fossil fuel and pipeline lobbyists and beloved by Republican opponents of progressive Democratic policies. Indeed, he's funded by Republican billionaires. But Washington lobbyists and billionaires are not the only source of personal political power that allows him to hold office and block little d Democratic policies that the American majority wants and needs. Back home, Joe has maintained tight authoritarian grip on West Virginia's Democratic Party structure, rigging the rules to put little Joes in each and every party position. In turn, this has long given Boss Manchin control over who gets to run as Democrats for down-ballot elected offices in the Mountain State. Until June 18, that is. That's when a statewide Democratic rebellion that had been organizing for 6 years elected its slate of over 50 candidates to oust the Manchinites on the party executive committee, replacing all but one of the top party officials with grassroots activists. It truly was a diverse, people-run victory. Selena Vickers, a social worker, was chief strategist, and Mike Pushkin, a cab driver, is now the party chair. Danielle Walker, now vice chair of the committee and the first person of color in state history to sit on the party's governing body, summed up the significance of this turnaround. There's a new beacon of light shining down on the government with people energized and ready to strategize with a return to the democratic process. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help bring this kind of progressive reform to your local or state Democratic Party, go to Our Revolution, the one national group working on this fundamental democratic change to the Democratic Party. OurRevolution.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So again, big day as the president signs the Inflation Reduction Act, and massive accomplishment. There's nothing more that can be said. I'm still struggling to believe that they actually got something done. That I'm still happy, but still kind of shocked. Now, the question is, we've talked about how it's going to help the climate. We've talked about how it's going to help Granny be able to not go broke and not have to choose between medicine and dog food, or is it cat food? Whichever the choice, animal food of the day was. Not going to have to choose that anymore. Good thing. But how's it also going to help state and local governments? How's it going to help taxpayers? How's it going to help the rest of us? That's why I've asked Akua Manning to come talk with us. She's the Director of Criminal Justice Reform at the Center for American Progress. She also deals with this kind of stuff, so she will help me work through this. Akua, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me.
So kind of a big day, kind of, to steal a Joe Biden line, a big blanking deal.
Yes.
I think I need a little more enthusiasm because it's kind of a big deal, right? I mean, I never thought that they were going to get this done. I would have bet my last dollar that Joe Manchin or Kirsten Sinema or someone was going to booger it up.
I think it took a lot of prod in deal making on the back end, but it was great to see that they were able to get something done. Unfortunately, it wasn't the bigger package that we were hoping for at the end of last year, but we'll take what we can get.
Come on, Akua, take a win. We gotta learn to take a win, because look, it's easy to go, I didn't get everything I wanted. I have never gotten everything I've ever wanted. This is the start. This is the beginning. This opens the door. This helps us start down that path, and then, we keep organizing, we keep building, and keep winning. To me, that's what we need to do. So let's talk about this. How's this going to help state and local governments? How are we going to help move us forward?
Well, I think, being able to utilize some of this federal funding, I think will help state and local governments really invest in public safety strategies that can be implemented for communities. We see that gun violence has become a really big issue in America, and if we are going to really combat gun violence, we need things like community violence intervention programs. We need supports for reentry, being able to support people who are dealing with homelessness and providing housing and these sorts of things that will keep crime at bay. So bringing in federal funding to help support these efforts will really make a huge impact for state and local governments in implementing public safety strategies.
It's going to free up a lot of money to do a lot of other things. I think this is great. It's going to help with healthcare. It's going to help with a lot of things that I'm looking forward to. And look, this administration has had some massive wins. I mean, the American Rescue Plan, massive win. And this is really what's going to help state and local governments because, well, the pandemic, still dealing with the really negative effects and the massively painful effects of the pandemic. Again, this thinking downstream on how we can help people's lives better, I think a good thing.
Absolutely. Just looking at the American Rescue Plan, it's added, anywhere from 5% to upwards of 23% increases in budgets for states. And you think 5% may not be a lot, but that's significant when it's the difference between being able to implement community violence intervention programs and not being able to do so without that additional funding. So it's a great opportunity for America.
So walk me through some of the specifics, because your most recent piece here, the American Rescue Plan, has helped state and local governments invest in community safety. Important thing. I thought lefties were about defunding the police. I thought lefties hated the police. I thought this was a bad thing.
So I think we are about supporting reform efforts that are going to really have an impact on crime reduction and supporting community safety. So there are, you don't always need to throw money at law enforcement. There are proven strategies that can be utilized to support public safety efforts. So I mentioned community violence intervention programs. Those are really popping up across America and are proven strategies to reduce gun violence. We've seen in some places it's made significant impacts in upwards of like 60%. Then there's things like alternative crisis response, where we're looking at dealing with mental health crises from not with law enforcement, but utilizing mental health experts, people who are trained to deal with these different crises, and taking them to the crisis itself, rather than having law enforcement deal with a situation where they're not necessarily trained for those types of things. So being able to provide crisis response supports and things like that right away can have significant impacts. Then you have things like housing support. We know that we're seeing a large amount of homelessness these days, especially in the last couple of years with the pandemic. So providing housing support to people that are most in need and most impacted is critical in supporting community safety efforts. And then also looking at the youth and young adults who are coming up into society and contributing to our society. How do we get them involved and provide them with job opportunities, abilities to reenter their education systems and continue with their education? These are all things that you really need if you're going to truly support community safety efforts.
And the American Rescue Plan does all of that.
Absolutely, yes. States and local governments are using funding to implement these types of strategies.
Yeah, because I hear you go through, we're going to send mental health professionals to crisis, and they're going to help them. And I go, that's great. We should have been doing that all along. Other countries seem to have been doing that, and they do it with much better results. And because what we do here in this country is we kind of let the police be at the bottom of the hill. And you know what they say about being at the bottom of the hill, everything rolls downhill and ends up in their lap. And we expect them to deal with all of the problems and all of the things that are going on. And a lot of times they're not equipped for it. And we get negative outcomes, and then we act surprised, like, oh, wow, it's shocking that the people who, aren't supposed to be dealing with this are stuck dealing with this. And oh, guess what? It didn't go well. So it seems to me that maybe not a bad idea, and something that I would think law enforcement would be all in favor of.
I think so too. I think it's something that many can get behind. It's a support for law enforcement. We're not saying to replace law enforcement, all law enforcement with mental health initiatives and crises specialists. We're saying let's look at the situation and the individual, and if this is not a situation that is a violent act or is harming others in the community, is something that is mental and health focused, then we should be bringing in mental specialists to address that issue, rather than just placing individuals in jail and hoping that the carceral system or the justice system will deal with them, because that's not how. We know that's not effective.
No, I was against closing all of the state hospitals like they did here in Pennsylvania a number of years ago, and then they just dumped all those people back into the community and said, yeah, let the police deal with it. Bad idea then. Worse idea than have not done anything since then around that issue. And as I've said 1,000 times, I support the police when they're not wrong. And I think that's the right response here. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're with Akua Manning. She's the Director of Criminal Justice Reform at the Center for American Progress. You can check out their website, AmericanProgress.org. They've got a new piece out. The American Rescue Plan has helped state and local governments invest in community safety. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Now, in looking at these really historic wins, I mean, the ARPA is a big win. You look at the gun reform bill, a huge win. CHIPS bill, and now today, the Inflation Reduction Act. But still a lot more to be done, right?
Of course, there's always a lot more to be done. But as you mentioned at the beginning, we'll take the small wins as they come.
Yeah, no, I mean, because that was the first response I got from everyone is, well, I didn't get what I wanted. I go, no, this is why you continue to organize and continue to move forward. And, what we've been talking about isn't the end all be all. There's still more that needs to be done because, I was looking at the job numbers and still state and local government workers haven't been back to the workplace in the numbers that everyone else has. Now we're back to pre-pandemic levels of employment and then some for everybody else, but state and local workers, not so much.
Yeah, that's right. And, these are things that we need to, like you said, we need to continue to work on. We need to be advocating for, these wins are great wins, but if we truly want to see, vast improvement in our societies, people are still suffering. People are still, not earning the pay that they need, that they deserve to support their families. So there's always going to be opportunities to continue to advocate for these types of reforms and continue to push the administration and our elected officials to continue to work on these efforts.
No, and that's the key. Keep pushing the administration. Keep putting people into power who are going to do the things that need to be done, that are going to be responsive to we the people, and not people who are just going, no, we hate government. We're going to tear it down, and we're going to make sure that nothing gets done. That's why I'm hopeful come November But Akua, I appreciate the time and the thoughts. Great work that you guys do. Keep it up, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Fabulous stuff. Good stuff, Akua Manning. Make sure you check out the work that they do over at AmericanProgress.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people on the talk. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2
On this day in labor history, the year was 1894. That was the birthday of the longtime leader of the AFL-CIO, George Meany. Meany grew up in the Bronx with his Irish Catholic family. His father was the president of the United Association of Plumbers and Pipe Fitters. Meany left school at the age of 16 and signed on as an apprentice with the pipe fitters. 10 years later, he was elected as the youngest member of the union's executive board. Within 2 years, he entered full-time union work, becoming a business agent. In 1934, he took the reins as president of the New York State Federation of Labor. 5 years later, he became the secretary-treasurer of the American Federation of Labor. At the AFL, Meany played an important role in the international labor movement. He helped to form the International Confederation of Free Trade Unions at the end of World War II. Meany then became president of the AFL in 1952. As president, Meany helped to lead the merger of the AFL and the CIO in 1955. The merger brought 15 million working people together into one association. Meany was known for his anti-communist positions and for having little patience for union radicalism. He was vocal in pushing for protections against employment discrimination in the historic 1964 Civil Rights Act. He also supported the passage of the 1970 Occupational Safety and Health Act. The act brought safer workplace standards to millions of workers throughout the country. Meany became the face of the labor movement, quite literally. Twice he appeared with his trademark cigar on the cover of Time magazine. He remained at the helm of the AFL for a quarter of a century, retiring in 1979. He died in 1980, but he will be remembered as one of the nation's strongest voices for human and civil rights.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So look, I'm in a good place on this. Today, good news. The president signs this massive bill. Going to help on a number of fronts, and as I said at the beginning, it's going to help on the inflation front a little bit. I'm not sold on the idea that it's going to defeat inflation. No, but it's going to help a little bit. It's going to lower prescription drug prices. It's going to lower healthcare prices a little bit. It's going to do some of that, and that's what it's meant to do. I had somebody go, no, it's going to be the magic wand. No, there's no magic wand. This isn't Republican thinking. And he's not going to be able to do the mind meld either. It's not going to be the I wish inflation away and it goes away. Kind of like declassifying documents after the fact. It doesn't happen. Doesn't happen that way. But I do think it's going to help with, especially for seniors. Because I think back to relatives who were in the donut hole. And people who never really got to retire. I think about my father-in-law, who, even in his later years, was still doing work to earn money to be able to just to pay for his prescription drugs and for the testing strips and all of the things that go along with, with his whatever ailments he had at the time. And you go, this is insane. We were supposed to have, this golden retirement, and we're supposed to be able to. No, he didn't have, and so many people don't have that. They've still got to have a side hustle or a side gig where, I got to pull in some money. I got to go to work today. It may not have been the job that they spent their entire lives doing, but still got to get up and still got to go punch a clock because got to pay for those prescription drugs. And as someone who eventually sees the end of the road coming for me and working, I would like to retire and not be at the mercy of a healthcare system that is gouging our eyes out. What's interesting to me is you never see a country that has national health care. You never see them trying to repeal it. I don't see the movement in Canada go, no, take away our health care and give us an uncertain system based on our having a job. No, you don't see that, do you? No, you don't see that anywhere. Now, are there problems and complaints? Sure, there's always problems and complaints. We're people. We complain about everything. But in those countries, and I've known people from all over the world, they they like their healthcare system. And they think it's crazy that the wealthiest country in the world has a healthcare system as screwed up as ours and as costly, as expensive. But you go, hey, we believe in profit. We believe in profit over people. That's how we ration our care in this country, by who could afford it, who has the right insurance. It's angering. It's frustrating. And this, hopefully, like I said earlier, move us in that direction to where maybe there's truly going to be a retirement at the end of the road. And this is where, I hope there's some organizing going on around, because I think everybody, at least I hope, no matter how old or young you are, you're going to get there someday. It used to seem a lot farther away than it seems now for me. But 65 is not that far down the road. Medicare age for me is, it's down there, but not as far as it used to be. And you want that have that opportunity to go, you know what? I'm gonna pursue dreams and all these other things still, without being tied to a job for health care. And this is where I keep coming back to, I think we should have national health insurance. You want to talk about freeing up people to do what their passions are? You want to talk about getting younger people into jobs and into careers sooner? Give people my age and older the opportunity to go, you know what? Time to step aside. Time to go pursue a different passion. Not be tied to this job that I've been doing for X amount of years just because of the health care. Because that's the reason it's there. Love to hear your thoughts on the subject. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Also, I want to get to this real quick. The abortion issue not going away. A couple of stories caught my attention. One from Louisiana. Evidently, a woman down there is being forced. Evidently, she has a week to make this decision. She's either going to have to carry a fetus to term that is missing part of its skull, or going to have to go to Florida to have an abortion. As she said, I know I'm carrying it to bury it, one way or the other. Just a matter of time. Top of the skull's missing. Don't know how you're going to fix that. But because of their law, because of how screwed up we are in this moment, she's going to have to carry that to term. Or as I'm going, why would you go to Florida? Crazy. Also, Florida. No, I got that wrong. She was going to have to go out of state somewhere, not to Florida. I screwed that up. My next story is about Florida. Evidently, a girl in Florida, 16-year-old, parentless. A court has ordered that she be prohibited from terminating her pregnancy. And I love the argument here. She's not sufficiently mature to make that decision. But she is sufficiently mature to be someone's mother. Let that sink in for a second. This is how crazy we have become in this country. You talk about common sense being common. No, not so much. We are in really, really bizarre territory. And I saw this story from West Virginia, where Jim Justice, the governor there, said that the voters shouldn't be able to decide the state's abortion policy. It should be the legislature. A bunch of old angry white guys. And it's one of those things where you go, I thought you were thought this issue was a winner with the people. No, not so much, because they saw what happened in Kansas. And this is where Republicans are kind of freaking out, because they really thought the country was with them. They really thought that they were doing the Lord's work, if you will. And what they found out is, no, the majority of the country is like me. Not horribly in favor of it, but not against it. Definitely not making it unsafe and illegal definitely not criminalizing women's choices, definitely not forcing them into, carrying fetuses that are already dead, definitely not doing the things that we're doing to a generation of women. And look, it's going to get worse. And the reason I bring this up is it's going to get worse. And we know it's going to get worse because these people don't run out of bad ideas. Conservatives and our Republican friends never run out of bad ideas. Our Christian friends, they're the people of punishment, of pain and punishment. You suffer. You made bad choices, bad for you. And now you're going to suffer for the rest of your life. This is who these people making these decisions, this is who they are. And I've said for years, ultimately, this is going to be something that as a nation, we're going to have to figure out again. We did once. We figured it out once. And it was okay for a while. And now the loonies have taken over again. And Jim Justice, what he knows is, if you can keep it in the General Assembly where they've gerrymandered districts and there's no real competition, and you can scare people into thinking that the Democrats are evil, which you hear a lot of, religious people now saying they're demonic. Those Democrats, they're demonic. They're evil. Because they want people to have health care, because they want kids to go to bed with full bellies. They want kids to have opportunities of education. They want people to have good jobs with retirement security and health care. And they want better lives for people. Somehow that's demonic and evil and all of that. And what's frustrating is there's a portion of the population that buys this. And look, and I've been saying for a very long time, we've got to let them go. We've got to let the fives go. We've got to let the loudest wheels, the squeakiest wheels, got to let them go. Got to shut them down, let them go. Because you're never going to change them. And you got to reach out to the people who aren't paying attention. You got to outnumber the crazy. And then maybe we got a shot. And maybe we won't have to talk about stories like this anymore. Sorry, 16-year-old, you're not mature enough to make a decision about your own body, but we're going to tell you you have to carry a child to full term and be its mother. Yeah. I guess next we're just going to rip the kid away from her. That's coming too. Just watch. If you missed any of today's program, make sure you download the podcast. Wherever you get yours, you'll find ours from iTunes to iHeart, Stitcher to Podbean, everywhere in between. Also, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks for being here.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.